Hey everyone, it's Dr. Butler here, and I have a special guest with us. I know her from my time when I was at Georgia State, and I had the opportunity to work with her about 10 years ago, I think. So, Lisa, if you'd like to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about where you work, your job title, all that, that would be great.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Kuosmanen. I'm a career education specialist at the University of Rhode Island right now. And what that means is I do career and internship advising for students. Currently, I specialize with our STEM student population, so I love working with them. I'm also on the leadership team at URI for Rhody First, which is our first generation student initiative. I'm the advisor for Society for Women in Computing. I'm on a number of search committees, and I love all things higher education and events. And as we go through the interview, you'll see kind of how I've gone from a sport management perspective to something closer to education.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing. So, the first question I'm going to ask you, can you tell us just a little bit about your journey, how you came to be in the position you are currently in from college until now?
Sure. So I went to college. I went to Penn State University. I arrived at Penn State. I was going to be an architect. It was going to be wonderful. And very quickly that changed. So I went into a different major, thinking health and human development, going more towards physical therapy. I'm not so great at science, I found out. So I changed again. Ended up landing in business, deciding on marketing because I felt it was the most flexible business major I could take. And at the time, Penn State did not have a sport management major. So what I did was I minored in exercise and sports science. And so I was able to kind of get that sport management major myself. After I graduated, I figured I was from Massachusetts. The Olympics were coming. They were coming to Atlanta. So I packed up my car and I moved to Atlanta, not knowing anyone. I worked a number of side jobs. I got an unpaid internship with the Georgia Games. That turned into the foundation for my career in events. So I did a number of events. I worked with nonprofits. I worked with some colleges in Atlanta. Ended up securing a position with the Georgia Games, where I worked on statewide festivals, became the coordinator of volunteers. It was my first real job in the industry. Then we were absorbed into the Olympic Committee, which was really exciting. I landed in the Olympic Committee, didn't really like what I was doing, so I made a change, went to go work for the city of Decatur, which was doing a 17-day festival. We hosted Ireland, Burkina Faso. We did a whole lot of great things and ended up doing that. Right after that experience, I went up to UMass Amherst and got my master's in sport management, which was an incredible experience. Left Amherst, went back down to Atlanta, worked in sports and events for a number of years, eventually went to go work with a marketing agency. And after working on the event side for about 6 months, they asked me to start a recruiting division. So that's how I started moving towards HR and recruiting. I seized that opportunity. It was excellent. I had never done that before. It was uncomfortable at first, but it ended up being a really good fit for me because I was still working in sports and events, and I was also kind of expanding my skill set and doing a lot of things that I loved. I founded that recruiting division. It went on to become its own separate company. I was there for 10 years. I became a director at the agency, loved it. And then life happens and my daughter came along and we decided to move closer to my family, which was in Massachusetts. So decided to make a big change. And as I made the geographic change, I made a career change. While I was at what was then Vivid Marketing, became PS Live, I started teaching for University of North Georgia in the business school. I also did a lot of speaking at conferences. So I kept gravitating more towards higher education, decided to go and get another master's in, this one was in higher education leadership at Mercer University, and then made the transition. So then I came to a crossroads where I was getting ready to move from Atlanta up to New England. I was going from different geographic places, but also I was changing career paths. So I was going from marketing, recruiting into higher education. So what I did was the year before I made the move, I did 40 informational interviews. So I looked at where my parents were in Massachusetts. I did a 2-hour radius, contacted directors of career services departments, and ended up networking my way into a job at URI, and it worked out great. So now I get to advise students. I do a lot of programming. It's just a really good fit. So although I've had 3 phases of my career, sport and event management, marketing and recruiting, and now higher education, I feel like I've taken the best parts of each step and made that the focus of my next step, and it's all flowed really nicely. So on the outside, it seems a little crazy and discombobulated, but when you think about it, there were definitely patterns that emerged, and I've been fulfilled. I've kept challenging myself, and it's been an amazing career path for me.
Wow. So thank you for sharing your journey geographically, career wise, all of that. I mean, I think it takes so much to change career paths, but also to leave where you've, built up your network and your friends and all of that. So, sometimes that happens, when you choose a career path or this or that. So thank you so much for sharing that. One thing that did stick out to me, the 40 informational interviews that you did.
Mhm.
So can you tell the students a little bit about informational interviews, why they're important, and just all of that?
Oh, they're an amazing networking tool. So what you do with an informational interview is you contact someone that's in a position or at a company that you aspire to connect with, and you reach out to that person. And so for me, I'd say, hey, my name is Lisa. I just completed my master's in higher education leadership. I'm transitioning to collegiate career services. This is my background. I highlighted a couple of my skills. I did research on each institution. I said, hey, I see at URI, you have this new career week that you've developed. I would really like to talk to you about that and learn a little bit more of the event side of things and really see what advice you have for me as I transition into the field. So informational interviews are a way for you to gather information that you really can't get anywhere else. It goes beyond a website or a publication. It's real life experiences of people that they share with you, the opportunities, but also the challenges I was also really interested in. And it allows you to make network connections. And what I found was if you're genuinely interested in it, if you're really trying hard, if you're having a quality communication back and forth, it's benefit to both parties. So what I would do is I'd do these informational interviews. I'd get great information. The people were wonderful. 95% of the people that I reached out to said yes, again, career services as a helping profession. But then I made sure to keep in touch with them. So if I read an article that shared a topic that we had discussed during the informational interview, I'd send that to them. I kept in touch. So I ended up getting my job at URI. And then a year or two later, I started getting inquiries from people I had done informational interviews with. And they'd say, hey, I see on LinkedIn you've been at URI for a couple of years. We have an assistant director position open. Are you interested in talking to us about it? Or they've sent me people saying, hey, I know we did this informational interview. I'm so glad you're doing well. I have someone that's in your position. Would you be willing to talk to that person and share your experience and tell them how you navigated specific challenges or changing a career field? So they're absolutely wonderful. The majority of people, if they have the time, they will say yes. And what I usually suggest is have five or 10 questions, but then organically see where the conversation goes. And keep in mind, it's not specifically to get a job. It is to make a connection and find some great information. And if you can share it back, that's great. Communication should work both ways. I think there's a lot of power and leverage you have as a student to do informational interviews because you're in the process of learning. And so you want to learn as much as you can about the reality of what a career field is. My first job at URI, I worked as an alumni career advisor. And so I would see alumni coming in anywhere from like fresh graduates all the way out to folks in their 70s and 80s, thinking about how they needed to adjust their careers. One theme kept coming up. I kept seeing recent grads, so relatively recent grads, new grads through like 5 years. And they were coming in and saying, oh, I got my degree. Maybe I got a master's, but you know what? Now I've been working in the field a year or two and I don't like it. Like now they're in crisis. So the more you can connect with professionals, do internships, get real life experience, the better idea you'll have of that reality, both the opportunities and the challenges, and the better decisions you can make while you're going through your education.
No, thank you so much for that. And I don't know if you recall, but Lisa was actually a guest speaker when I was in grad school in one of my sport management classes. And afterwards, I was so excited about everything that she was sharing with experiential marketing and what she was up to that I went and introduced myself to her. And since then, we've stayed connected, and you got me involved with a lot of cool things like Chick-fil-A kickoff game and all of that, and just opened my eyes to this whole entire world of sport and sponsorship and marketing and all of that, which I had no idea about at the time. So I thank you for that, and for that informational interview that you gave me, and glad we could stay connected all these years.
Definitely.
So my next question with you, I met you when you were working with Team Epic and then PS Live. So can you tell me us more about your time working with PS Live and just experiential marketing in general?
It was a really exciting time, honestly. So when I came into the agency, we were relatively small. I came in on a contract basis, working an event. We had about 35 people in office, and it was just two guys that had these great ideas that started this company. They had a ton of energy, and it really was a big family. And we kept that energy as we grew the agency. So even as we, moved up to Team Epic and PS Live, and now they're MKTG, We definitely had a great energy, things that bonded us. We really looked out for each other. And I think that's why it worked so well. The thing that the agency did was it made sure to put people in positions where they thought they'd be successful. And sometimes that meant trying things out and seeing if it was a fit or not. If it wasn't, they could move to something else. The clientele we worked with was amazing. I mean, lots of huge companies, the Pepsis and the ESPNs and the Infinities, doing activations, everything from your Super Bowls to your Major League Baseball games to Chick-fil-A kickoff to some of your more local events. At our height, as I was doing recruiting, we were hiring 8,000 people a year throughout the country doing these activations. So there were a lot of logistics involved, a lot of trust among our team. And one thing that was really important and is really at the crux of experiential marketing is the ability to innovate. And so you can have an amazing idea, and that's great, but then the culture changes and people change and clients are different. So you constantly have to challenge yourselves and each other to come up with great ideas. And the agency has been able to grow in incredible directions. It's become huge, and then it became a part of, Dentsu Aegis, which is a giant multimedia company. The opportunities there expanded beyond the Atlanta office. Some people worked in different offices across the country or across the world. But the one thing that I keep coming back to was the quality of the people. And experiential marketing, a lot of people don't know what it is. It's, connecting people with products and brands, having that exchange. So they're going to form a relationship with that, an affinity with that, and then that's going to affect their behavior moving forward. So at the core of it is connecting with people with ideas and information. And when you're doing that effectively, it's just absolutely amazing because you're having so much fun doing it. I can remember I used to speak at a conference. There was a sport management conference in Savannah that Georgia Southern ran every year. And so I'd go and I'd set up my table, and it was Lisa with the Experiential Marketing Agency. And then there's the PGA and the NBA and all of these big name sports things. And I wouldn't have a ton of people at my table. I'd try to engage folks, and they didn't really know what it was. Then I would do my session. And after my session, like, everyone would come to our table because they didn't know exactly what experiential marketing was, how it was so exciting, how you were connected with different events, different sports properties, how you could really just come up with these great ideas and activate them. And some people, it just really suited their personalities. And the thing I found with our agency is you could really move up quickly. I mean, there are always opportunities. So it wasn't like you were in a position for 5 years. I was promoted 5 times in a 4-year period just because of the way the agency was moving. So there's a lot of opportunity from that perspective as well.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing. And I think just with you sharing just the synergy and how important it is for everybody just to be able to get along and work together and really build that trust, because you have so many moving parts. I mean, you said you would hire like 8,000 people. So staffing was very important in that aspect, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So my next question to you, and you already kind of touched on it, but I know that you were down here for the 1996 Olympics. So can you tell us about your involvement and just as far as how your experience influenced your journey when you got here for the 1996 Olympic Games? Because I feel like we're always talking about that. That's an exciting moment here in Atlanta, but just in the United States and the world, all of that. So just share your experience. That would be great.
Sure. It was an incredible time for Atlanta. And so when I'd moved down there, again, I was working multiple jobs. I connected with the Georgia Games. It was a statewide games system of competitions. And really, the Georgia Game was created to cultivate venues, sponsors, and volunteers for the Olympics. So we knew we were ramping up for that. So as we did that, we transitioned into the Olympic Committee. And then the thing about the energy and the culture of Atlanta right then was that everybody was moving toward that goal of the Olympics. Everybody was invested. And so it worked out amazingly for me in my career because as the coordinator of volunteers for the Georgia Games, which was a very difficult position, this was before email. So I would come in sometimes and pick up my phone and I would have like 150 voicemails. We would have to physically call all of the volunteers. I mean, thousands of people throughout the state. But what happened was every organization in Atlanta, our pro sports teams, colleges, different companies came to us for volunteers because we had this great pool of volunteers. As a result, I was the liaison. I'd schedule everything, I'd book everything, I'd go to all the events. that was what allowed me to create this huge network throughout Atlanta at the time when sports was just kind of at its pinnacle, when the Olympics were coming. And that is something that was great for me because, again, I mentioned I was on the Olympic committee, and it just wasn't a fit for me. I wasn't on the ground. I wasn't in a venue. I wasn't doing something that I liked. And it was because of all of those other relationships I had built. I was getting calls from other organizations saying, hey, we're doing this. And then the call from City of Decatur came, hey, we're running a 17-day festival. We're running a soccer game between the US and Ireland. We're running a concert series, all of these Olympic related events. And so that became a great experience for me I think I was 25 at the time, to be a co-director of this festival that we had thousands of people through. I mean, big name musical acts. I got to negotiate a contract between the US and Ireland in soccer. We had the US bobsled team on site. We hosted the US Processing Center. So for all of our athletes that came through our town, they did their press briefings, their medical screenings, got all their uniforms. It was just a great experience. Then that led to a connection with working with the USOC, again, working with some of the venues, attending a lot of the events, and the investment that was made into some of the resources there was incredible. And the number of people that came to Atlanta and built their lives there was great as well. I just think it gave a boost to the city, and it's just kind of springboarded off of that as well.
Wow, thank you. I mean, I don't, we hear about the 96 games, but we don't know, all the different aspects of it. So for you to give us that snapshot, that's really helpful, especially because they're going to be creating a project, a bid project, and just thinking about all those things. I think that will help guide them. So I was talking to you the other day, and you were telling me about your relationship with Bill Sutton. And I wanted you just to share with us just the importance of mentorship, being a student, having a mentor. And I mean, I can't even imagine what it's like to have a mentor like Bill Sutton. So can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, Bill Sutton is amazing. And to be totally truthful with you, when I applied to graduate schools, I was already in Atlanta. I had no desire to leave Atlanta. I was going to go somewhere else. And my mother said, why don't you come up and interview at UMass? They have a really good sport management program. So I came up, I interviewed, and Bill Sutton, there was just something on my resume that had caught his eye. I had some experience in events. Again, I had done my undergrad. I had 3 years of solid experience, then was going into graduate school. And he took me under his wing, and I was able to work with him under a grant from the NCAA. I also worked at a major NBA project. And the thing with a mentor like Bill is these folks, when you find the right people, they are so invested in your success. Bill is wonderful with connecting you with people. He knows everybody. He really gets to know you, but he's also really honest with you. So he's not just a yes person, like, yes, you can do this. He definitely challenged me in some amazing ways. And I always tell students, like, really invest in your education and think about what you're doing. I think graduate school is amazing if it's the right step for you, because what graduate school does is it gives you a foundation of content, but it also connects you to people and resources. And when you find people to connect with, and when you find these mentors, it's just an amazing experience where they're going to push you. They're going to expose you to opportunities that you didn't even know were possible for you. Plus, they're going to support you along the way. And I think one of the most rewarding experiences I had was I had gone through graduate school, and Bill had recommended a position for me, and I had turned that down. I had gone to do something else, and he completely respected that. I think he thought I was crazy at the time, but he respected that. And then we found ourselves speaking at the same conferences, and we had a conversation, and he talked about how proud of me he was, and how I had always followed my heart and made decisions and choices that were the right things for me. And sometimes that varied off of a conventional path, but his steadfast support, to this day, we're still in touch on a regular basis. And I actually had a reunion of his graduate assistants, which I missed because I had shoulder surgery a couple of years ago. But getting to see him as much as I can and talking to him, he still does so much for everybody. And he's just such a wealth of information and just a wonderful person. I strongly suggest you go out and you find people like that. They're going to challenge you. They're going to be your champions, and they're going to help you along the way. Sometimes it's going to be really positive. Sometimes they're going to give you that extra push when you need it, even though it's going to be uncomfortable. It's like they kind of know because they know you so well, they know what you need, and when you don't even see it yourself. And I think that's how mentors can be so valuable. And you're going to have different mentors. You may have mentors that you connect with in school or in the professional world. You may have personal mentors. It's not just a situation where you have one mentor and that's what you do. Look for mentors in different areas of your life. You can have mentors. I have mentors that are undergraduate students that are teaching me things. And so we have done a reverse mentorship program at PS Live, and it was amazing because traditionally you think, oh, you're going to the more mature, experienced person. But there's a lot in our world that's changing so quickly that younger generations can teach more mature generations in terms of how to work-life balance, all of those different things. So look for mentors in all aspects, not just like a traditional, I'm a mature person, I want to talk to you because you know a bunch of people. Look all around you for those mentors.
Wow, no, that's great that you shared that. Just being a student of the world, right? And it doesn't matter about age, and connections, but what can we all share with one another? So, just hearing that as far as, okay, I'm getting mentored by an undergrad student, I think that's great. So thank you. So my next questions, well, the next few questions for you have to do with your current position. So you've had all of this experience working in events and sports and marketing, and now you are a career education specialist. And I just think it's so great that they have somebody like you in that position because you have such a depth of knowledge about so many different things. So can you just walk us through what an average work week looks like for you, the highs and the lows?
Sure, absolutely. I do a lot of individual advising. So that's the core of what I do. I do one-on-one advising with students. I do a lot of presentations. So faculty and classroom presentations are important because in order to generate awareness about our center and how we can help students, sometimes we have to go directly to the students. And so a great way to do that is through the classroom presentations. I run a lot of specialized events as well. So we do our own, obviously, career fairs and things like that. But the really great thing about our department is, again, it comes back to innovation. We don't do the same programs just because that's what we've done. We do programs that the students want and need. And so we solicit feedback from students all the time. From that, I've developed specific programs in salary negotiation, technical interviewing, a lot of specialized networking programs. I do a speed interviewing event. So anything that we can do to help connect students with people and resources, information that we think will benefit them. A unique aspect to my job is I also work with employers. So sometimes I like to put on my recruiter, my employer hat, because although I am helping students now come into events and connect with employers, I was the employer. And so I know what I looked for at that point. And so I'm able to offer that perspective to the students. And some students will say, well, I did this A to Z. I did everything as I was supposed to. Even though you do everything you're supposed to, there are still those intangibles that are based on what the employer needs, how you can provide value to that employer. So sometimes you're going to go off of your plan a little bit, understand and listen to that employer. And again, it comes down to showing how you have value and how you can help the employer. So I spend a lot of time talking to employers. What can I do to best prepare my students for opportunities with your company? How can we connect you? So through some of those conversations, we developed Engineering and Technology Career Week. So again, adjusting a little bit because of COVID, we weren't able to be in person. We developed a whole week of robust programming where we specialized with different majors and different topics in different industries. So that was a really rewarding experience. I would have to say, as I love advising, it's probably tied with teaching. So one of the amazing opportunities I have at the University of Rhode Island is to teach classes. So I teach 4 classes on a rotating basis. I teach career planning and strategy. And so what that is everything you need to determine what kinds of jobs you can get, how you can connect with employers, building your career tools, understanding more about yourself. We talk about emotional intelligence. We talk about unconscious bias. We talk about diversity and inclusion. So it's a course that encompasses a lot. I also teach a couple of internship seminar courses. So courses that students will take as they're doing internships to help reinforce their learning. And I also teach an academic and career planning course for our talent development program. And so talent development is a program at URI that funds underrepresented students for 5 years while they go through their education. And so I teach one of the first classes they take when they arrive on campus, and then I'm able to be a resource for those students all the way through. So the themes that run through are, supporting and helping, connecting with people, and really sharing information and getting people the information that they need, connecting them with the people they need in order to be successful. So student success is the core of what I do, and I get to do it in many different ways. So as a result, no day is ever the same. During the fall and spring, sometimes I have a heavier course load and presentations. Right now, I'm gearing up to teach a summer course. I do a lot of trainings in the summer. I'm getting ready to do a certification course. I'm in a online pedagogy class right now. I'm developing LGBTQ plus content for our website. So a lot of heavy project-based stuff in the summer, but I'm still meeting with students kind of here and there as they need me.
Very nice. And I was actually going to ask you some questions about the impact of the pandemic, and then also what you're doing with diversity, equity, and inclusion as far as the work goes now. But I feel like you touched on a lot of those. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'll say in terms of the pandemic, there are two main areas that have really come to light for me. So I'm very much a goal-oriented, high-achieving, get-it-done person. And one thing that I have really come to, especially through COVID, is the fact that I need to put grace before content when it comes to my students. I need to know where the students are coming from, because so many students have had challenges. We've all had to alter our lives. We've had challenges, we've had opportunities. And again, the core of what I do is helping people and getting to know each student to determine what they need. And so that has been a really good thing that has come out of COVID, is allowing me to focus more on connecting with students and being a better listener and leading with curiosity, as opposed to some of the content. Because they may say, hey, I'm coming to you for a resume, but there are a host of other things that you need to talk to them about in order for them to kind of create an effective resume or to do an effective job search. Another thing with COVID is just the increased emphasis on technology. So I'm 49, about to be 50. Technology is not my native language. My daughter teaches me how to do all these technological things, but I've been talking about making videos for 25 years. Well, guess when I learned how to make videos? Last summer, when I needed to, and now I love it. And so it's allowed us to kind of connect in different ways virtually. And I don't think, when we talk about it right now with our staff, we're not just going back to the way we did things. We are going to take advantage of some of these virtual resources, some of the ways we do things, because it better serves our students in terms of access and equity. Allowing our students to tune in virtually sometimes is a lot more valuable for them than requiring them to come into a meeting or come to class. You have to look at all the barriers that students are facing, all of the challenges, what they have on their plates. Our vice president of student affairs did a talk a couple of years ago, and she's my age, Generation X, and she talked about our college experience and the current experience for students, and they're so different. And that's something that's important to remember for me, because as I think about the perspective of my students, the world is very different from when I was in undergraduate and graduate school. And so technology and some of the changes that have come from COVID are helping with that. In terms of diversity and inclusion and equity, that is probably the number one priority for us as a staff for professional development for our university as well. With everything that has transpired over the last year or two, we've embraced the policy to become anti-racist, to actually not just talk about and celebrate diversity, but actually do something about it. So we've been meeting for 4 years as a group. I just completed a certificate in social justice and equity that URI does. We are looking at all of our materials. We're infusing, we call it JEDI, Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion content. We're infusing JEDI into all of our coursework. We're infusing it into our modules. We're infusing it into our conversations, because it's something that's really, really important. We just developed a great BIPOC section on our website for students of color. It's just something that's been long overdue, and we're taking a very active role in doing those things. And you learn so much. I really dove into diversity, equity, inclusion when I was in graduate school and thought I was pretty well versed in it, and I wasn't. And so every day is a challenge. Every day it can be uncomfortable, but at the core of what we're doing, again, it comes back to helping our students and supporting our students. And those JEDI initiatives are crucial, absolutely crucial to what we're doing. We're getting new leadership at URI. We have a new president coming in, a new provost. And so we've already set a plan in place. They will hopefully endorse and then put their stamps of approval on it and whatever additions they want to make. But campus-wide, we're moving forward at a very proactive pace to dive into it more and to better serve our students. So that's a really, really important thing that we're doing right now. Number one priority.
Absolutely. And I like that acronym you have, JEDI. I think you're the first person I've heard use it. Usually I usually hear DEI, right? So I really like JEDI. And I like how you focus on it's the crux for how you do everything, right? You have to have that foundation for inclusion, making everybody feel welcome. And then also too, just putting that emphasis that we all come from different walks of life. So we have to listen, we have to learn, and we have to adapt. And yeah, this year has taught us that. And thank you for sharing your experience and what you all are up to over there. So we're getting down the last few questions, and my third to last question for you. What advice do you have for current students who would want to pursue a career path such as yours in experiential marketing, and then also too with what you're doing as a career education specialist?
Okay, so in terms of any advice, I talked about internships. I talked about getting experience. Try things. That is the number one thing. You may think you know something from talking to one person or looking at a website or reading a book, but there's so much that is out there that you're just not aware of until you follow the path a little bit deeper. So I think trying different things, getting different experiences, and I always encourage my students, as you're going through experiences, as you're doing research, at the minimum, have a piece of paper, put it in your phone, on your computer, positives and negatives. So the positives are things that resonate with you, that get you excited. Then in your gut, you're like, yes, this is what I love this. I want to pursue this more. The negatives are the watch outs, and they are just as important as the positives, because you have to figure out what you like to do, but also what you don't like to do in order to make better choices to move you further down the path. So I think getting experience, doing informational interviews, and also being confident. I think at some points through my education, my father's from Finland and he had very specific ways of thinking of things. When I majored in marketing, when I went into events, he was not really thrilled with that. He's like, you need to be an accountant, you need to be an optometrist, you need to be something that I know what it is and it makes a lot of money. And so that's where I relied on my friends and my professors and my mentors to kind of help coach me through some of those things. Because while my father had really good intentions, he didn't understand the path that I was following. And so it's been really eye-opening for me. And it's great information for me as my daughter kind of does the same thing. And I'm like, oh, I want her to be her own person. But then I'm like, oh, I think you should do this. Nope, you make that decision yourself. So it's excellent when it comes to parenting. Also, in terms of moving forward, is learn it as much as you can. I don't think, time is so finite right now. And the one big difference from when I was an undergraduate and even my first graduate degree is just the access to information. It's just overwhelming. So I'm a big fan of LinkedIn. So connecting with professionals in the field, connecting with groups, connecting with companies, because then it's easy enough for you to you have 5 or 10 minutes, you go on the app, you scroll through your news feed. When you're connecting with people that are in positions, companies, groups that are related or relevant for you, you're going to get that news feed. You're going to find great information right there. And that's the real life stuff. One thing I always encourage students to use is the alumni finder function through LinkedIn. So you can go up to that top left search box, type in any college or university, go to that school's page, and there's a button called alumni. You click on that and it brings you to a database of all of the alums that are in LinkedIn from that particular college or university. Then you can sort them by 6 categories or put in your unique keywords. And so that is where you can find people to connect with, to do informational interviews, to see what skills they have. If they're working in a position that you aspire to, what skills do they have? What skills do you need to get while you're in school? If you are joining groups, again, some of these groups have tens or hundreds of thousands of people. These are the folks actually working in the professions. It's really important to tap into that information. So I think join those groups. LinkedIn, I swear they should pay me to work for them, but I talk about them all the time. It's just a great tool. And it levels the playing field, because when I was in college, I was a first generation college student. I did not have a network of uncles and friends of the family that were in all these positions. My father and his friends that came over, they did all kinds of different work, but nothing that was in business or marketing. And so with LinkedIn, it allows you to easily find those people and connect with them and share stories and get information and tap into what's really important in those industries. As a career education specialist, I follow a lot of those same themes in terms of connecting with people and finding information. But one thing that's really important is being curious. And I know for me, and I'm not sure if you all do, Clifton Strengths Quest type of stuff where you're looking at your top strengths, it's an assessment, or your Myers-Briggs. When you look at your interests and your personality and your strengths, you see that you are shaped in a certain way or you're wired in a certain way. Some of your strengths are really going to be able to carry you far, but it's really balancing your strengths and working with people that complement you that's going to help you take that extra step. And the way you can accomplish that is by being curious and by talking to people and by tapping into information and not necessarily making instant judgments, but taking it a step beyond that. Another thing that I think is really important, especially to recommend or kind of guide students as they're in school, is engaging in leadership. And leadership means different things. Leadership is not just leading people, it's leading programs, it's leading initiatives. It doesn't necessarily mean get in front of a huge group of people and saying, we're going to do this. Find ways that you can lead that are effective to you, that are going to teach you different things. That's going to help you build your confidence. That's going to help you build your knowledge base. And again, that's going to get you further on the path where you're going to be able to make choices that are going to take you in different directions.
No, thank you for sharing. I was reading SBJ Sports Business Journal, and they were talking about, what they look for in, future hires. And one was inherent curiosity, leadership skills, teamwork, problem solving. So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Can I add on to that real quick? Because that's a great point. So I work with STEM students right now. And so there are the technical skills and you're succeeding in the classroom. More and more employers that I talk to in the STEM fields and other fields, they say, yes, you have to have the basic skill set to come in and do a job, whether it's technical or practical experience. But one of the most important things, they are those foundational skills that you talked about, Dr. Butler. Problem solving, critical thinking, adaptability, creativity, because employers have told me I can teach someone how to use a specific computer programming language. I can't teach them to be a hard worker. I can't teach them to be intrinsically motivated and curious and things like that. So when it comes to employers looking for things, yes, absolutely, having the baseline, the foundation of your skills. But if you go above and beyond and show them how you're proactive and how you have all of these foundational, also called soft skills, that is just becoming so important. And right now, I'm working with the Rhode Island Coaching Corps, Governor's Coaching Corps. So I'm one of 35 career professionals throughout the state going through a specific program. And we're talking about how hiring is going more skills based. So it's going in a direction away from credentials, away from experience. Just because you've been there, done that, doesn't mean you're going to be great moving forward. Because what it's doing is it's limiting some folks in terms of their ability to access certain jobs. And so they're moving more to a skills-based model. Employers are and people across the country are. So as you're getting your credentials, super important, getting that information, making those connections, build your foundational skills, because they're what's going to really take you to the next level.
Well, that's really helpful for me. And I do have, this is actually one of my last questions, but what should sport management professors like myself, what do you think we should be teaching as far as in the classroom to better prepare our graduates? And I'm thinking more or less in the experiential marketing event side of things. Right. So sports and stuff. What would you say?
I would say, going back to those foundational skills, critical thinking and problem solving.
Okay.
Because when it comes to experiential, when it comes to events, you have a million moving parts. Something is always going to go wrong. And so if you have the ability to critically think and solve that problem without everything else collapsing, that is going to be way better for you. And so being able to be nimble and adaptable. I think leadership, something that I talked about, is also really important, whether you're leading people or programs or initiatives. Just it brings with it some confidence, and that's what's going to help move you forward. Another thing that's critically important, I think, to everybody right now, especially experiential, is technology and data analytics and things like that. Think about it. Companies, organizations, they're making decisions based on data. And so especially when it comes down to experiential marketing, they're going to say, okay, we can do a point of purchase promotion and get this result, or we can roll the dice and do this experiential program. it's harder to justify those experiential dollars sometimes, especially coming out of a time of COVID. So I think where you can acquire and show the data to support what you can do, the impact you can have, that is just critically important, more important than ever when it comes to experiential marketing. Now, the nice thing is, as I've been reading some of the literature and some of the news in experiential marketing, it's definitely, it's coming back, but they're reinventing themselves. They're finding new ways to do things. A lot of companies have gone out of business. They weren't able to, withstand COVID. So there have been challenges, but one thing I always tell students is, yes, there are challenges. Don't let them hold you back. Find the opportunities, because there are always opportunities. And that's what's going to help you be successful and move forward in whatever career path you choose. Experiential marketing, particularly, talk to people in the field, gain mentors, talk to your faculty members, read as much as you can, and then think creatively and be curious. And the nice thing about experiential marketing is no idea is outlandish. And so when we would do brainstorms, we had Hasbro as one of our clients for our marketing agency at PS Live. And so basically what they did was they shipped us a whole bunch of their Nerf blasters, and they said, make something marketable. And so what we did was we all went into the warehouse, we put on our goggles, we put on our vests, we created Nerf Dart Tag, which became its own sport property. And so we had different regional tournaments, and then the finals, the national championships, were held at Disney's Wild World Sports in Orlando, and actually made the sports property. That came out of us brainstorming and running around the warehouse, blasting each other with Nerf darts. So it's pretty cool to be a part of something like that, and to work in that environment. And experiential, the culture, the work environment is awesome. It's music. It's, you have a great camaraderie, and it's definitely a more relaxed environment. Some people it's fantastic for. Some people, they need more structure, and that's okay. But I think the culture and the structure of what experiential marketing can offer you is amazing. And again, so many different opportunities out there to grow in lots of different ways, and you can grow and get promoted very quickly in many cases.
Very nice. Very nice. Thank you. So we have our last question here. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap it up for today?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to speak with you, because it's so exciting to talk to faculty that are reaching out and connecting with different people to expose their students to different things. And I just think that's so exciting, because again, things are changing quickly, and you want to prepare your students as best as you can. And so I encourage you to keep doing it. And for the students, some things are going to resonate with you. Be open to the information that you're gathering. I know there's a lot of it coming at you, but at the end of the day, like, think about what really gets you excited. Like, what do you want to do? Sometimes students will say, well, I'm really good at this, but that's not what I want to do. Well, sometimes there's a way to blend those things together. So do some gut checks with yourself throughout your career. And again, I've loved the 3 stages I've had, but the previous 2, when I knew it was time to move on, I was like, I've done this. I need something that's going to make me excited. I love this core piece of what I'm doing. I'm going to use it as a seed to kind of grow in a different direction. So when it comes to that, I think it's really important to be curious and challenge yourself. And there's an exercise that Dr. Catherine Brooks recommends. It's called a wandering map. And so what you do is you take a blank piece of paper and you put your name in the middle and you circle it, and you just write down anything that comes to your mind for 15 minutes. And it can be, I'm in this graduate program, or I'm a fan of the Boston Red Sox, or I won the spelling bee in 4th grade. You just empty your brain, anything that comes down. Then you look for different patterns in terms of skill sets, in terms of interests, in terms of culture. So when you're going in and you're looking at a potential workplace, there are a couple of things you want to look at, and a couple of things that you can determine through the interview. First of all, is the job something that you want to do? The skills required, the duties that you'll be doing, the responsibilities you have, is that something that you want to do? Are you excited to do that? Next is the company culture. Is this a place where you want to be? Think about the energy, think about the people, because so many people don't consider that. They say, well, this is an amazing job. And then they get into a culture that's not a great fit for them, and it's harder for them to be successful. If you can find a place where you can really find a fit when it comes to kind of the skills, the duties, the kind of work you're doing, the people you're doing it with, the culture of the company, that's where you're going to get kind of maximum benefit and satisfaction. And it also makes you more excited to learn and be curious and to take on additional responsibilities and do different things.
Well, thank you so much for all of your advice. I feel that it's very, very helpful, and we are so happy to have you and just sharing all your wisdom and your knowledge from over the years. For me, as a professor, I wouldn't be able to have a lot of the experiences if it wasn't for you really giving me that foot in the door and allowing me to ask you questions and, work different jobs and things like that. So I'm very appreciative of that. And I always say that, hey, I'm not going to be a specialist at everything. I don't know about some things, other things I do. So when I don't know about it, then I call on my colleagues, people I've met in the past, so that you can give your insight. So if somebody says they know everything, I think that's a red flag right there, because we don't. And so we need, other people to help us out when maybe we're not so strong in some areas. So I appreciate you helping out in this area. So thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.